Alright, Freedom in the Galaxy. This is the Avalon Hill version. SPI put out a version as well, but I never saw that one. This is, at least in concept, one of my favorite types of games. Well, one of my favorite games. The whole idea behind this, it's a farce. It's Star Wars presented, and I don't remember the copyright year on it. Let's see. Geez, I can't really see. Got my contacts in and I don't know if I can find the copyright. It's kicking around somewhere. But this is not long after the movie, the first movie. The second one may have come out as well, but it's very much based on that first movie. And one of the designers of this, there's two designers for it. One is Howard Barash, who's done The War of the Ring that I covered a while back. Should be up here somewhere. There it is. And the other is John Butterfield, who's done a number of really cool things. Barash takes the character idea of the game from War of the Ring, and you'll see we have little character cards, and they each have various ratings, both for leading in the military game as well as for direct character combat and for skills and stuff. And it's a really, very character focused type of game. Let's take a look at the map, talk a little bit about it. What we've got is an empire, a corrupt empire, that's trying to defend itself against this rebellion that's growing. And, Star Wars was young at this point, and not a lot was known about the story. So here they're kind of filling in the blanks from what they saw of that first movie, and some of the characters fit very closely to some of the Star Wars characters. So, for example, you have Princess Leia and Obi-Wan Kenobi, essentially. And you get somebody who's very much like Skywalker, Adam Starlight. Right. Even the name is sort of close. And on the bad guy side, well, you have an emperor, but you don't really have an emperor in that first Star Wars. You have uniforms that look kind of like the Star Wars uniforms, and you have these Imperial Knights, most specifically Red Jack, who's kind of your Darth Vader type character, but you don't have this sort of mystical force type stuff going on in here. What you've got is a flavor that is very distinct from where Star Wars ended up going. All right, let's talk a little bit about the components, what we have in the game, and maybe we'll touch a little bit on what it's about, and then hit the sequence of play. I'm not going to go through a full rules explanation of this because, quite frankly, I don't want to learn the full rules. This is a game that I've played maybe a half dozen times, like a lot of other games, maybe a little more. And I skimmed the rules and kind of know most of them, and that's good enough for me. All right. So first of all, you have this big star map, and it's divided up into different planets around different suns. And the main tracks on here, each planet has a track which keeps track of certain information. It keeps track of the loyalty to the Empire. It also keeps track of planetary defense battalions. Each environment on the planetary surface is rated for different types of terrain, and they may also have, in some cases, like here, a race that lives there. Almost everyone is inhabitable, and then maybe some kind of monster that you'll automatically meet if you meet a random monster. Alternatively, if there is no monster or event to meet in the area, you end up meeting something random, which is like security bots or I don't know if there's beasts. Anyway, that all comes out just kind of through the use of the action cards. Okay, so I'll go into a little bit of that. But when characters want to do something, they declare what they're going to do. They draw a pile of action cards, and then they start flipping through them And we'll see what one looks like. And it gives certain, it's divided into different types of terrain, and it gives certain codes to indicate successes, and then it also gives an event on it, which will affect you, perhaps. In addition, you have these mission cards, which explain in detail what each of the different actions that you can do are. These are mostly not used. I mean, you will use most of them throughout a series of a game, but most turns you won't use very many of them. There's a few that really kind of stand out as very useful. You have the character cards, which I've exhibited. The Rebel has a lot of characters. The Imperials don't have as many, and the Rebel's going to start with his kind of grouped together, whereas the Imperial's got his spread out throughout the board. There are also these little royal characters, which, that's just an Imperial one. Let's look for a mixed one. Some of them are double-sided, and they'll have a red side on the other side to indicate that they're Rebel aligned in that state. These are people you can kind of summon to help you in leading troops or conducting missions on board on that planet. The stars are all connected by these little jump routes. The galaxy is divided up into 5 sectors, and the numbering system is based on that. So this is Sector 1, Sector 2, 3, etc. That is important, particularly for something called the Strategic Assignment Deck, which restricts what the Imperials can move and do during a turn. And that's very important. You also have a pile of galactic events, which are just, they come up every turn. There's only 20 turns in the base campaign game. Although I have here, let's see who this gentleman is. Sounded very impressive. I don't have his name here. It's on the Geek. Uwe something or other. I don't think it's one of the famous ones. Anyway, writer. Uwe Writer. He apparently really loves the game. Realizes as a game this has some serious problems. Among them, it is completely unbalanced. He's made a rather comprehensive variant to it, meant to correct the balance situations. I'm not going to be playing with it, but I may steal some ideas with it because I agree the game is unbalanced, but the problem is I don't have the experience that he has with it. So what I see as the unbalance is, geez, my Rebel characters get killed all the time early in the game. Now, my wife managed to teach me strategy which might help with that. But it was too late for her by the time she figured it out. So far, solitaire play, I've screwed it up constantly, and anyone I've played against who played the Rebels screwed it up constantly. I've never played the Rebels myself because they're sort of the more fun side to play, and the Imperials are the side that has to know more of the rules to work effectively. Of course, if you gave a really incompetent person the Imperials, and maybe I'm that, because according to this, some of the stuff that I believe that I do, which prevents the Rebels from surviving to some extent, is something he says no self-respecting Imperial player, no competent Imperial player would do. Among them is turning these PDB, planetary defense bases, up so that they work, and that's one of his grumps about the game, is that no one would do it. Therefore, one of his fixes is for that, and I'm kind of like, well, geez, I do it all the time, and I always win with the Imperials, so I must not understand something. His concerns are more with 2 things. One is the survival of the Rebels, which is important. He's fit in this kind of cinematic set of rules to it. I don't like that idea. To me, the Rebels being at risk is part of the game. I don't particularly want them to survive automatically. And another part of it, though, is to make a rebellion itself militarily feasible. And I'm not at all sure that's the case with the base rules, even with me being the Imperials and being presumably incompetent, because what I've seen is the Imperials can pretty much stomp any rebellion when it happens. All right. Even if I put those PDBs up. However, what else do we have? We have tracks to keep track of monies that the different sides have. This is a full strategic game in the sense that you have productive capabilities. In fact, the Empire starts out fairly weak. And then again, the Rebels start out completely weak, except they have a pile of characters who are able to go out and do missions. And then you have a bunch of military units. The Imperial ones are listed with a mobile side on the back for the most part, not the militia, which means they're able to move around hidden. The Rebel units are not hidden. They have the little Rebel control marker on the back, which indicates, hey, the Rebels have taken this planet. We have little informational markers here for items. Special atrocity units, the Imperial atrocities, which included essentially a Death Star type thing. You have your elite units, some Imperial characters there. These are spaceships. The Rebel characters, and for that matter, the Imperials, but only the Knights start out with those, have their own little personal spaceships. Otherwise, you have to travel with a military unit. For the military counters, they have two numbers on them. They have a land combat value and a space combat value. And the space combat value is going to be important for navigation as well as for combat itself. All right. The goal of the game for the Rebels is to cause lots of things to go into rebellion, and they need like 26 victory points of stuff. I don't remember what is worth a victory point. I think it's a planet, but maybe it's an environ within a planet. That doesn't make too much difference from what I've seen of the game, because the Rebels can't survive to get a viable revolt going. I've seen them cause a revolt, but it gets squished right away. And that is actually one of the complaints. You also have a fairly hefty little rule book here, 32 pages total, some charts and tables for combat, and other information. Character sheets to record hit damage. I've got some additional little cheat sheets here. And you have this Galactic guide, which gives you some background information, but some of it's actually important to the game, where you look up certain critters to see what they're like. And character information, which gives you information you have on the cards, really. Magic items, I mean possessions, that are also like that. And then a manifest of all these secrets. Now, I haven't talked about the secrets. Some of the planets have a secret on them. This is preset at the beginning of the game. And these range from a number of things. They could be planets. Yeah, there's one that's a living planet that'll support the Rebels. There's another one that's pro-Rebel, very, very pro-Rebel population, even if the planet doesn't appear it on the board as it stands. There's one where the planetary stabilizers have already been used, which, if it's discovered, will become this huge scandal, and you'll see how that works out, I think. The Imperial player knows all the secrets at the beginning of the game, and he's allowed to do a certain amount of setup. He starts with some money, which he's limited to allocating throughout the sectors somewhat smoothly. He also starts off with his 4 knights and the other characters that are on the board. And he gets to purchase with his cash military units and PDBs, and he gets to activate the PDBs. The PDBs can be either down, which they all start at, or you can raise them, and I think it's a 1 resource to raise them. So it's a fairly cheap cost. Uwe claims you never want to do that, though. I don't believe him. I will be doing it, regardless of whether I am wrong. Okay. One problem with the rulebook is it's split into 3 subsections. One for the star system game, where you're playing in 1 star system. And then the rules change a little bit if you move into an entire province, and where the players are working over a province. And then finally there's this grand campaign where they spread over there. One of the more interesting things in the advanced or variant rules is they kind of handle, hey, what happens if the empire collapses, and keep going with the rules there. And I think it may actually be a longer game, not just fixed at the 20 points. It goes to a completion of some sort or another. I may steal those and use them if the rebels start doing really well, even though I'm not playing with most of the rest of the variant. There are some things where actually the rules aren't terribly nailed down because of this shift between rule sets, that maybe I'll also take some of his tweaks as, yeah, that's how we're going to actually do it, without really... Actually, one of them is from a general, but he's taken that over himself. Okay. Let us look at the base mechanism through the sequence of play. And I actually have a little cheat sheet for this. My ex-wife wrote one of these up. She was very good about things like that. Oh, and there's one more thing. The Rebel player gets to set up his character groups kind of wherever he likes to. But in addition to that, he has a set of planets. I don't remember how many. I think it's 36 planets he can choose from, somewhere around there. That one of which will be his rebel base. Now, his rebel base is where his treasury is going to be, and as planets revolt, some of the money will go there, and it allows him to kind of intervene with cash for dealing with the PDBs, and it also allows him to build up a stockpile so that he can launch an armada all at once with kind of a shock value. Now, throughout the game, the Imperial player can be discovering planets that are not the Rebel base out of this list of 36 or whatever, and eventually could nail it down, or narrow it down, to where he knows exactly which one it is, and then he could use the planetary stabilizer on that. That'll have bad effects if it's discovered. Well, it will be discovered. It'll have bad effects on some of the other planets, but it'll also wipe out the Rebel base, which will wipe down the resource track, but then the rebels end up with sort of no base, but the ability to collect cash still, and the ability to utilize it elsewhere without sort of a central base where they could build up an army. They can't build up the army, but they can use it to invest in the PDBs, for example, which is an interesting possibility. Okay, so for the Galactic phase, or for the Galactic game, and actually we have the sequence of play written out here too. The first thing in each turn, and each turn is going to be, each full turn is going to consist of 2 of each player turn. So first the Rebel player goes, then the Imperial player goes, then the Rebel player goes, then the Imperial player goes. But in between each of these, there's going to be a Galactic stage. And one of the things you do is you draw one of these events, and it's in play for the rest of that turn. And it can be some pretty severe stuff. It can be navigational hazards throughout the whole region, etc., which make life very difficult on both players, perhaps. Then we go to a resource phase within the Galactic stage, where each side... actually, I don't think the Rebels are supposed to collect income here. I may tweak that if they aren't, just in case, because their revolt doesn't really snowball the way you feel it should. The Imperials, however, collect taxation off a different province each galactic turn. So, turn 1, they don't get anything, but turn 2, they get to tax the second province. Turn 3, the third province, etc., going around. And in addition to that, you're able to tax the home world, the throne world over here, and the capital of the first province as well. Just to add some additional money, and you can throw that money into the province that was taxed or the first province at the capitals or thrones. Throne for the first province. And you can build new military units for that. You can also build up PDBs and stuff like that. I think those are unrestricted. During the resource phases, when the Rebel player would be allowed to build their own forces at their home, at their secret base, but they can also upgrade their PDBs, turn them on there, and finally they can actually upgrade the level of them, but that'll reveal the base just as building troops will. Now, that's the tweak I want to make. I'm going to allow the Rebel player to upgrade their PDBs in their own turn, which I think Maybe not. That's kind of the grump that the variant, one of the big grumps the variant seeks to fix is, hey, if the Imperial player doesn't upgrade his PDBs, the way planetary control works in this game, the Rebel player can essentially be starved out of a chance to really ever control a planet. On the other hand, if I make it too easy by allowing the Rebel to do it during his Rebel turns, then he's going to be able to grab planets maybe a little too easily. So I'll probably go with the base rules. I think there's a way around that all. And finally, the strategic assignment deck. Now this is stacked at the beginning of the game by the Imperial player, and it selects provinces between which the Imperial player can move. And wow, my eyes are bad now. With the context. So here it would say province 4 to province 5. Well, it's not really that limited. It's province 4 and province 5, and you can move between them. And you can also move within them without restrictions. Otherwise, if you're in other provinces, you have very restricted ability to move your military forces. And this is kind of where the secret is. The rebels want to play hide and seek. And when they see that strategic assignment, they run away from where the Imperials are are able to actually act, and go to other areas where things are quieter. Now that means the Imperials can squelch any rebellion going on in that area, but it keeps the Rebel player alive for a while. All right, so that's the Galactic stage during the player turns, and they're the same in both. The first thing you do is an operations phase. Well, that's when you do movement. And movement is essentially, there's a number of different ways you can move. You can move physically, walking around between environs on a planet. You could also take your spaceship up into orbit and fly to another environ on that planet. And if you were discovered, you're hidden by doing that. You're not being tracked anymore. You could also fly to another planet in the same system, or you can do a hyper jump, and there's a little hyper jump table somewhere over here, and it works into affect your navigation skills. So you want to have a good pilot. Some of the spaceships may be better at different things. One of them is good at hyper jumps. It's a special spaceship. But some of the others are particularly, good at slipping through the enemy defenses. Some of them are good at fighting, which means if you end up fighting, if you end up with like a naval detachment chasing you, you're going to be better able to take it on. Or if you end up in a gunfight with one of the Imperial Knights, which actually you should be able to win. The Imperial Knights shouldn't be attacking you on your own unless you have a very weak spaceship. So that primarily handles your movement on the board. The further you hyper jump, the more of a chance you're going to screw up. And that essentially there's a die roll modifier, and if you end up with a positive number on the die roll, you end up with a possibility of getting knocked out either into the drift space, or then there's the drift 2 space, which takes you over here, which takes you a turn to recover to the drift space, or finally you could just go completely awry, and that's these D's are damaged hyperdrive, which means you won't be able to jump again. E is an elimination that could cause your spaceship to be destroyed. I don't think there are any misjumps except for those drift spaces, which kind of take up some time, and those can be painful in and of themselves. But you could lose your ship making a jump. The search phase. So what happens here? I don't remember who's active during the search phase. And it's not going to tell me here, but it will tell me over in the character game. Okay, so the opposing player is able to search for you with resources he has in the area. And this is kind of like the War of the Ring type thing. You go in this search table here, and you set up a search value, which is based on, say, the strength of one of the units involved, or of all the units involved, plus leaders and stuff like that take effect on it. And you have a chance, the larger the group, the more of a chance that you have of detecting them. Size of the group is effective there, I think. And I'm not remembering how you calculate hiding value. I seem to remember size is important. There it is. Intelligence rating plus the environ size minus the number of characters. So yeah, the bigger the group, the more trouble it is. One of the ratings is the intelligence rating, so a smarter character is going to be better. But a larger environ is easier to hide in. And a larger environ provides the characters with more opportunities and risks to do things. Finally, you go to what really is the meat of the character game, which is the missions phase. Now, during the missions phase, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be splitting your groups into little action groups. And the action groups pick one of these actions that they want to take, and then you draw a bunch of cards. You draw a bunch of cards equal to the environment size and flip them over one at a time. Now that's for all the actions taking place in that environment, and that can spoil them all or cause all kind of problems. But eventually, if you get through with those, then you're allowed these bonus draws in which you just grab a pile of cards, and those are done on a per action basis. You grab a pile of cards and see, hey, did you get the letter you needed? Now, you can get the letter you needed through your initial draw. You could also get it through your bonus draw. You can stop drawing after a success with a mission. If you get enough success with a mission, you can say, well, I'm not going to risk this mission any further. I'm going to take the result I have. You'll see how that works, but that's really the basic mechanism to it. Some of these, though, are not as easy as others, and there is this little breakdown I have here of how all the cards kind of break down by mission type based on environment type. And, well, some missions are easier to do than others. Some of them require more than one success on the cards. Some of the characters give you additional bonuses to accomplishing the mission. It has to do certain possessions. That can't be all there is. Yeah, this is what happens when I don't actually explain all the rules. Huh? It certainly isn't all there is. So when you fly into an area, you can be searched for by the spaceships that are in orbit around that planet. You can be searched for by the PDB, and they work in conjunction with the spaceships. And they get a chance to shoot you. The PDB can just fire as you're trying to land. On the other hand, the spaceships might send out a detachment. You use this little detection table for that. They might send out a detachment to go shoot you, and that'll be somewhere in here. Maybe not. I don't think it's the squad chart. I think it's it's based directly on the strength of the units. So you take the lead unit's naval capability or a revealed unit's naval capability. The Imperial player has the choice to reveal the unit, and that determines the strength of the firepower of a little squadron that tries to shoot you down. If you're found in an environment, if you're found by characters, you go to character combat, which uses a chart very much like the one used in War of the Ring. And it works pretty much the same way. But you might also you might also be discovered by troops. If there are troops that find you, they can send a squad after you instead of characters going after you. And they have sort of a random, well, not a random, they have a set value based on the quality of the troops, and they can hurt you. There's an Imperial Suicide Squad, which I believe just executes all the characters or something. There are missions the Imperials can do to screw you up too. If they've detected you, they can do an assassination against one of your characters. Or you can do that against the Imperials as well. And the Imperials are hidden too. Of course, they're on the map. There's no double blind on that. The only thing that's kind of hidden is these mobile units and, of course, the secret base and the secrets and stuff like that. What else do we have? We have military units themselves. Some of them, those with a 0 space combat rating, the right-hand number, aren't really able to move. They can walk around on the planet they're in. They can actually get on board a unit with at least a 3 space combat, I believe, which can carry them. And it's at a 1-for-1 level. So you can ship garrisons essentially around. On the other hand, units that do have a space combat have a limited ability to fly around on that hyper jump table, but they have the best is a 5, and that's a fairly limited ability to move within that table. I believe the space leadership value might actually count on that. And characters are able to lead forces, again, kind of like in War of the Ring. Largely, this is an experience game. You know, you're looking at it for the story. You're looking at it for what comes up. Unfortunately, the story that I've seen every time I've played is the rebel characters all die. I'm hoping to get a little further along than that on this play. Some other day, maybe I'll get to the point where it's actually coming close to a balanced game, and I think that's what that expansion is trying to do. But I don't want to jump into new rules yet. I want to try out some different tactics, see if I can beat this incompetent as an Imperial. And that's about it. I did mention the Imperial player gets to stack the strategic assignment deck. At the beginning of the game, he gets to set up the order that it's going to be in. To some extent, I almost always do, hey, I'm going to be taxing Province 2. Great. I want to do something that allows me to move to and from Province 2 on that turn. Now, that's a tell for the Rebel player. If he can detect something like that, and it's fairly easy to do so. If I were a Rebel, I would assume it and then play as though that's the case because I think it's the best move for the Imperials. And then if I find out it's not the case, I might be shocked. We'll see how that goes because I'm going to be playing solo. So, you know, I'm kind of thinking the same way. There's no big surprise there. And the big surprise was actually the thing that my wife taught me, which is don't leave your rebels all spread out. Get them together and work together with them, because then they can mutually support in a lot stronger sort of way. Of course, she'd already lost 2 of her 4 rebel groups by the time she was able to do that, and that wasn't sufficient. That's how most games of this end. All the rebels end up dead. That's where the cinematic survival role comes into play. All right, well, very brief overview of the rules. Just to give an idea, sort of, rather than going through the mechanics. You'll see the mechanics as I play. You'll probably see me struggling to try to relearn how something really works. But largely, I think I do actually remember most of this. It's only been a couple years since I played it. All right, so up it goes.